Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today we're reviewing the new album from Brockhampton, Saturation 2. Alright, all you Brockhampton fans, I know you guys have been patiently anticipating the release of this album, as have I, of course. Now, when it comes to Brockhampton, if you're unfamiliar with this group, they're sort of a hip-hop collective, I guess you could say, more than just hip-hop, and they do other types of media, I guess you could say, though I guess the music is the part that has been blowing up recently, especially with the release of their first full-length album, Saturation, that was only released back in June. I jumped on board with the fan base when that album was released. I heard it, I checked it out, I loved it, I reviewed it, and if you want to see that review actually, as well as some of my reviews for some of the tracks on this album when they were released as singles, as well as my review for the lead single for Saturation 3, follow. You can check that out in my Brockhampton playlist, which is going to be linked in the description below, and on screen here at the end of the video, so you could just click on that, it'll take you to that playlist where you can check out all my Brockhampton related stuff. But yeah, I became a fan when Saturation was released. I love that album, it's one of my favorite albums of the year. I really enjoyed that project. So I was both looking forward to the release of this album and kind of, I was a bit nervous because typically when artists release 2 albums in a year or more than an album a year or even just a double album in a year, it tends not to be that good because a lot of times what you end up getting is like an album's worth of good quality spread across 2 albums. So you'll have a lot of filler tracks or bad tracks in there just to kind of take up space. Which isn't something I'm particularly a fan of. So I was kind of scared here to see if that's what we were going to be getting with Saturation 2. And especially now with the knowledge that there's going to be a 3rd album, I was kind of, even more concerned that these follow-up albums wouldn't hold up to the first Saturation album. So, how does this album do compared to its predecessor? Well, honestly, I can't be certain, but this may surpass the first Saturation album, at least in my opinion. I'm not 100% sure on that. As of right now, listening to it, I do kind of feel like it is better than the first one. However, that could also just have to do with the fact that it's new, and I've listened to the first one so many times already. I'll have to wait till the end of the year when I rank these albums for my year-end list, but as of right now, this is a great album, guys. If you were a fan of Saturation, you're gonna like this album pretty much. I think it's almost guaranteed that if you like that album, you're gonna like this album because this album manages to be like a good follow-up, and like it makes sense that it is the follow-up to Saturation, yet at the same time it is its own thing and it is different from the first album. There's certain aspects of this project that I guess you could say are similar to the first album in terms of like the order of the tracks that are present here and just the overall sound of these tracks and just the concepts that are tackled here on these songs. I feel like that is similar to the original Saturation album. However, of course, all these tracks are new and just original and exciting in their own way, that they become their own thing, which I think is the most important and like one of the most shocking things about this project. It manages to be a sequel album released only a couple months after the original, yet it's able to, both follow up and, understandably fit under the umbrella of, I guess you could say, the Saturation era of this band, while maintaining its own identity and its own sound that makes it interesting, and it makes you want to come back to this album. It's not an album that you're going to be like, why would I listen to this album when I could just listen to the first Saturation? No, you're going to want to listen to this album as well because the tracks here are just as good and, in many cases better, I think. Like the original Saturation album, a lot of the tracks that we get here on this project are a mix between tracks that go a bit more hardcore and some more depressing, slower, sadder songs here that all manage to be mixed very nicely here on this one package. The album starts off with arguably one of the hardest songs, Gummy, which I did do a track review of already, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it here. But essentially, the things I liked about this track, especially as like an opening track here on the album, is that it has all the rappers doing their thing. You get to see how each of their own flows and deliveries and lyrical topics are different from one another here on this one track. And that's the thing I like about Brockhampton as a whole, is that despite the fact that there's so many people in this collective, that they're all uniquely like talented and have their own thing about them that makes them really talented and awesome, in my opinion. And Gummy just shows that off perfectly, and that's why I think it's an awesome way to start off this project, aside from just being, a super like hard song that goes really hard, I guess you could say. And I think it parallels nicely with Heat, the first track on Saturation, because that was also a heavier, kind of more hardcore track, and here we have Gummy as well. And that's kind of another thing I want to be talking about in this review, just how these 2 albums sort of parallel each other. You also have a fair share of more depressing and sadder songs here on this album as well, and those were some of the moments I really liked on the original Saturation, just seeing some of these guys able to talk about more personal subject matters here, and it is something I still like seeing here as well. Just take tracks like Gamba, for example, or I believe that's how it's pronounced. I did really like that track. I like the more, I guess you could say, sadder sound that it had going for it for the most part. And you have the closing track here as well, Summer, which I think also parallels nicely the closing track on the first album, Waste, because here once again it's more of a just a sung song that's a bit more, I guess you could say, soulful and all the way through. You have some nice vocals thrown in there. You have a nice guitar part here on this track that just sounds very beautiful, and it's a kind of a nice way to close out this project as a whole. It's very, I guess you could say, depressing yet positive way to end off the album. And I do think, like I said before, it does thematically tie the album together in like a cohesive way and connects it back to the first album, and hopefully it'll connect it to the third album as well whenever that's released. And I do kind of like how it does sound summer-like, this song, and that's something I would have to say about both Saturation albums that we've done so far, but this track in particular sounds very summer-like, and given that it is summer now, I guess it kind of makes sense that it would be released. Another couple of tracks that really reminded me of a track from Saturation, the first album, were the two shorter tracks here in the track listing, Teeth and Jesus, each track being only about 1 minute and 20 seconds long. These tracks reminded me of the track Tupac from the first album, because that track was also rather short. However, despite the fact that both these tracks are really short, kind of like Tupac, they have a big identity of their own despite the fact that they're so short, and they manage to shine through with just a lot of personality in them. For example, the verse that we get here on Teeth, really the only verse in the song, is just really powerful, and it sticks with you a lot despite the fact that it's only like a verse and it's only there for not a good amount of time of this album's runtime. It's just a really standout verse here on this project, one of the best overall, and it kind of reminds me of the verse on Tupac as well. That was a good one. And then, of course, you have the track Jesus, which kind of reminds me of the outro on Tupac, which was a bit more sung and a bit more soulful, I guess you would say, with the vocals. And I feel like that they managed to have these two shorter tracks. They still have a lot of personality in these shorter tracks, despite the fact that they are, rather short. And, I don't think it's possible for me to say the word short anymore in this video, so I'm going to stop. Just throughout this album, you get so many catchy hooks thrown into this thing, which is another thing that reminded me of the first Saturation album. Just the hooks on this project are just so earwormy, and they stick with you so well throughout the course of this project that, just even after listening to this a couple of times, all the hooks are just stuck in my head. They're so memorable, and they stick out so well here on this project. And another thing that Brockhampton bring back from their previous works is the use of like vocal effects, whether it be like an auto-tune or just pitch shifting something, which is something that typically in music I'm not really a fan of. However, I think it's really used well here on this project, like it was on the first Saturation, and I just think it works well here in the context of the album. I know it's something I'm not typically a fan of, but it worked well here, so I gotta give credit where it's due. The production throughout this album is once again just fantastic, like it was on the first album. It's just pretty much awesome all the way through. It perfectly matches the more alternative hip-hop and R&B style that Brockhampton go for on these tracks, once again ranging from beats that go a bit harder, like on Gummy for example, and also having a bit more of a soulful, even laid-back feel like on Summer that I was talking about before. The beats just perfectly match up with, the vocals, the delivery, the lyrics, all of that. And speaking of the lyrics, I really like them here on this project as well. And once again, we get a wide array of topics that are covered here. Of course, all the members of this band want to kind of do their own thing in terms of the lyrics and just kind of tie them together into this general concept of a song. And we get some really interesting things talked about here. Like Kevin Abstract, for example, talking about his own place in hip-hop as a result of kind of being a gay rapper who talks about it, I guess you could say a significant amount more here on this project. And of course, I do like how he's kind of examining himself in the context of hip-hop, just as a greater concept in general. Of course, Saturation was a massive kind of album of sorts, at least in an underground kind of way, and I guess he's kind of now reflecting on, his own fame of sorts, and looking at himself and what he could possibly become, and what he's possibly done so far, the influence that he's had on hip-hop already in just a short amount of time. And I think that's kind of cool for him to kind of be looking at these things. And also you get lots of other interesting subject matters here, aside from, just loneliness and things of that sort. You all talk about racism on tracks like Fight, for example, which I thought was well done as well. I know that's something that is rather common throughout hip-hop, but I feel like it was especially done well there on that track. Just the kind of story that's told there is very interesting and very intriguing, so I did enjoy that a ton. Overall, I have to say that the lyrics on this album get 2 thumbs up from me because they are very intriguing, very diverse, yet they don't exactly wander and go all over the place. They're still very concise and they're very organized in the context of this album as a whole, but they are very interesting and diverse in the subject matter that they decide to tackle. So overall, guys, as far as Saturation 2 goes, it's a really good album in my opinion. It's definitely a great project. It's going to be one of my best picks for the year at the end when I do my year-end list. It's definitely going to be on there somewhere. Like I said before, I'm not sure if it surpasses the original Saturation. I think I'm going to have to give it a lot more time to think about that, because honestly the quality of these 2 albums are really close to each other. And that's the thing that really shocks me about this project, that Brockhampton managed to release 2 albums in such a short amount of time that were so consistent with each other. That just amazes me. I'm starting to think like the house that the guys in Brockhampton live at is just some creative hotspot, and anyone who walks in there is just blessed with immense creativity, because at this point that's what it seems like. Like, these guys did something that most artists that are veterans, that have been in the music game for years, have never been able to accomplish before, and these guys are only like in their early 20s. Like, that's amazing, to be honest. And they have a third album on the way too that's going to be out before the end of this year. And you know, as far as the quality goes for that project, like I said, I am a bit concerned still because I haven't heard all too much from that. But based on Follow, the track that they already released from that album, as well as how well this album was as a follow-up to the first Saturation, I'm not super concerned that the third album is going to be bad. Will it live up to these first two? I'm not sure, but I think it's at least going to be a good album. And if they manage to release 3 good albums in a single year, I think Brockhampton are going to break like a record or something for the most consistent release of albums in like a single like short amount of time or something like that, because I've never seen something like this done before with such a high amount of quality. Overall, this is a fantastic album, and you need to check it out if you're a fan of Brockhampton. If you like the first Saturation, you're definitely going to like this one, because like I said before, it does manage to keep all the elements that on Saturation that were very good and that I really enjoyed, yet, you know, do their own thing with them, make them new. And that's what's really important here. It's a new product, yet it has a style that's similar to the first album, and that makes sense given that they're both Saturation albums, if you will. So overall, yeah, I'd have to highly recommend this project. Definitely check it out, guys. And make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below your thoughts on this album here. Make sure you subscribe, because like I said before, I will be reviewing Brockhampton Saturation 3 whenever that is released. I believe I saw on Twitter it's going to be before the end of this year, so you know, I can't wait for that. Maybe I'll review some more singles leading up to that. Definitely check out that Brockhampton playlist I was talking about before, linked in the description, and it will be on screen here at the end of the video like I said before. Follow me on all the social medias linked in the description, and stay golden, guys.